Hi, everybody, and welcome to this conversation of impact for kids. I'm Kathy Dominy, and today I've got an amazing, wonderful, inspirational guest, Jess Clair. So I'm just going to read you a little bit about Jess, and then we're going to get into the conversation. Jess Clair is a leadership mentor, a business strategist, goodness me, get my mouth together, and a social media genius and a successful entrepreneur. Jess has spent 18 years in corporate and financial services in the field of research, technology, data, and analytics, process, design and engineering, customer experience, and business growth strategy, and moved across into the online space early 2019 to make a bigger impact. Jess spent 6 years immersed in leading and coaching in transformational programs where she got profoundly connected to what it is to be human, her own humanity and struggles that she hid trying to fit in. She decided to take all this experience and turn it into an online elite end-to-end social media school that teaches embodiment of social community care. She talks about becoming the kind of human and business owner that demands joy, authenticity, ruthless accountability, and integrity of self. For Jess, leadership is about connecting deeply with yourself, your voice, what matters, and what's important to you. Your vision, your creativity, and the courage to express it, even if you risk failing. So, hi, and thank you so much for being here. So great to see you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I love that. I love the idea of being able to contribute to a conversation about children in leadership and young people in leadership. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. So I love very key elements of your bio because as you know, I'm all about soul's evolution and what does it mean to be human and how do we find the best version of ourselves and how do we get there? And I think that's really essential for children, particularly when we're going through this global phenomenon where there's lots of things going on in the world, huge conscious shifts and energetic shifts. And I think it's really important to be having these conversations right now because we are redefining who we are and we're trying to figure out our way forward in this sort of new paradigm. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Jess, because I know that you've done a lot of work around this, is what do you think it is to be human?
That is a very, very good question. What do I think it is to be human? I actually think, and then this might sound quite conceptual, but this is what I do think. I think we are in this amazing body that is such a privilege to be in. And what it is it's an opportunity. So we get to create whatever it is that we want in life. And I think that whilst I'm in this body, I don't see myself as different to anyone else in this world. So what it is to be human for me is that I'm in this version or this flavor of a human, but actually completely connected. And there's definitely a lot of evidence to show that through quantum physics, the whole connected. So the whole collective, I should say. So my job in this world is to somehow contribute to the collective, using my body and my voice as a way of doing that.
Wonderful. And what I love about what you say in your bio is the concept of demanding joy. So yes, that sounds a different twist on it. You know, we hope for joy, you know, we wish for joy, but demanding joy. So what do you mean by that?
Well, there's plenty of reasons in the world not to have joy present. In fact, if you spend all of your day thinking about the things that happened, you'd have 99 more reasons to not have joy than you would to have it. So generally what we do find during the day is we're dealing with tasks and jobs and kids and family and parents and awkwardness in conversation and, you know, whatever it is we're doing during the day. And so there's a whole lot of reasons that we could find potentially not to experience joy. However, being someone who demands joy is actually like out on the front of it and going, do you know what? Living in this world actually does take something. It's an energetic experience there's a lot of demands on us. There's a lot of responsibility on us. There's a lot of expectations people place on us. We place it on ourselves. So how could we, despite what's happening under any circumstances, create and demand that I am going to be someone that brings joy in this moment? It has nothing to do with what's happening. In fact, the most inspiring moments that I've experienced for myself have come when I've been that demand under the most difficult circumstances. And I'm not talking about positive, very different. I'm not talking about being, if someone's really hurt in front of me and I'm like, yeah, just cheer up. I'm not talking about that. That is definitely not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, if someone is in front of me and is hurt or is experiencing something, how could I inquire in that moment, how could I bring joy? And that doesn't always look like happiness and upbeat and positive. That can sometimes be connection. That can sometimes be intimacy. That can sometimes be sitting next to someone and feeling what they're feeling as a way of contributing to them being seen and heard. So demanding of myself that I be that person in every moment has me completely experience life fulfilled and satisfied. So it is actually, whilst it is for me, it's almost like on behalf of the collective, this is what I contribute to life.
I love that. And you know, what I was thinking while you were explaining that was, I was obviously putting that lens on my life. And I was thinking about even when there's somebody not in front of you, right? When you're in your own world, you're in your own head, you're doing your own stuff. And I find my pathway to joy is gratitude. So like the other day, I was ironing 11-9 shirts, you know, as we do that, we're getting ready for the week.
So good.
I really hate ironing. Like I didn't iron since 99, but now the kids do all need their school stuff ironed, so I iron it. And I was sort of feeling, you know, I really don't like doing this. It's one of those mundane chores that we need doing and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, you know, I really need to be grateful in this moment. And I actually stripped it back quite profoundly, because I've got friends who have lost children, and what they wouldn't give to be stood ironing those children's shirts for those children to go to school, you know, and then through that gratitude, just feel joyful for having these people in my life and having the opportunity to create this experience, and et cetera, et cetera. So for me, even, you know, the mundane stuff that we can get bogged down with sometimes. So like you were saying, you can get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff, and particularly kids, you know, they've got deadlines, they've got responsibilities, they've got everybody's rules to follow, they've got all of this stuff that sometimes can feel quite out of their control, actually.
Absolutely. And you just pointed to it when you said that here you are in this moment, ironing clothes, and what you connected to was someone else's experience of what life is like. You know, when you went, I have friends that have lost children that would give anything to do this. And so in that moment, what you do is then connect to the privilege that it is to be a mum. Yeah. And that you've got these kids in front of you. And like you said, it's a gratitude practice. And this is what when it comes back to being human, it's like, we are not here as an individual. We're here in the mix of a large collective. So when we connect to, I mean, even just feeling what that would have been like for you, there's so much joy in the creation of children. Now, I'm saying that with also the acceptance that anyone listening right now could not be feeling like that. Like, it could be you've had a bad day with your kids. It could be, if you are a young person, you could have been like, oh, screw all adults. They just don't even listen to me. So I say this knowing that there's so many different experiences and places people could be. And I'm not saying don't feel that. I'm absolutely not saying don't feel that. What I'm saying is that you can create for yourself, you can become for yourself someone that feels all of that, allows all of that to be there, and is for yourself and others someone who demands joy in that moment anyway. Yeah, not and to take it away. Yeah, sorry.
I love that, and the more conversations I'm having with these extraordinary people all over the world, the more this theme keeps coming up,
Mm.
which is we don't go, that's negative, we don't want that, that's positive, that's what we want. What we're actually aiming for is to have the whole human experience, because it's there for a reason. Everything that is brought to us is there for a reason. And even the stuff that we perceive to be negative, and there's so much running around perceived, that I don't want to feel sad, I don't want to feel grief, I don't want to feel angry, I don't want to feel, but it will chase you. Like, you have to sit with the moment and feel the feels, and the more you run away from it, the more it will chase you, and it will manifest as illness or depression or something. And so I think what you've said is really important, that we have to sit and just embrace the whole experience, but within that find our lesson, our blessing, our gift, our joy, however you want to label it. And that is profound. And I think, we've all been through those dark times where we're struggling to find that joy. And it's in those times, it's the most important to dig down and find it, to look for it.
Yeah. I think finding it is a moment of choice. And I think everyone can probably relate to this. And I'll give you a real example. So this morning, because life just keeps happening to me like everyone else, and anyone who is listening, if anyone makes you think that they're always happy, it's not true. Whatever you're experiencing, everyone is experiencing, and we all just have different flavors in which we express it. But this morning, I was, I'm having this discussion with my partner, and we're not close to each other. Like, my partner is in Sydney, I'm in Brisbane, and we're not close to each other, and we're trying to work something out, right? And I want it to be worked out now, right? I'm like, just work it out. And that doesn't actually work for my partner to work it out now. It's like, there needs to be some space and whatever. And so I remember having this moment where I'm so frustrated, like just so frustrated that I can't work this out. I've been trying to work this out for so long, and there's this moment where I notice it now. I notice there's this moment, and it feels like this pathway where I could go get really upset about it and angry, or I could feel upset about it and angry, and also have a look at the whole picture. So it's like, I feel like this, and there's nothing wrong with me feeling like this. It is so okay with me to feel frustrated and angry about this, and experience that in my body and notice it. And then at the same time be like, what is it like for my partner right now? And then feel what it is like for her. And then feel what it is like for people around us. And then go, this is actually what everyone's dealing with. Like, I get back to this. I'm a human being. I want answers. I want everything to be great now. I want, we get into this pattern. And then I always come back to, when I share this now with you, the real joy is that I don't have to pretend who I am. I don't have to hide it. I can just go, this happened to me this morning. I found a way to connect back to the privilege it is to be alive. I also have no answers to life. I haven't figured this problem out. I know eventually I will, but there's some real joy in just being able to be human. And I get to share that with you today. That to me was creating a moment of joy for myself. And there was that moment where I was like, I could get angry, frustrated, react, go down this path of kind of destruction, as I call it. I know what happens down there. I've done it a few times, and it would go nowhere. It would make it worse. And I'm not saying not feeling it either. There is a way to feel it and to really connect to what I call the collective, and also create the joy.
Yeah, and I mean, what you're describing there is what we call radical empathy. So you start in your own head, and you're actually seeing your position in whatever's happening, and that's very personal to you, and it's very subjective, because the way I see a situation, you're going to see it slightly differently, etc., etc. And that process of being able to see it from your partner's point of view, see it from everybody else's point of view, what it is very liberating, because you're seeing everybody in the equation be human. Everybody's just, going through whatever they're going through. And a lot of the time as well, it's very sort of liberating in the fact that we go, okay, it's not actually so personal to me as I thought. This isn't this person isn't going out of their way to make my life particularly difficult. That's where they are at the moment. This is where I am at the moment. We're all doing our best. And it takes a lot of pressure off of that situation, being able to see it so radically from everybody else's point of view. And it just brings that perspective that I think some people sometimes forget about because they're so in their own heads.
Oh, 100%. And I think just on the topic of young people and children, I think it's worse when we think of children personally, because children have only been on the planet for a very short amount of time. And then we expect them to carry all the wisdom, experience, moments and learnings and failings that we've had for 30, 40 years. And so what we're then demanding is that they be like us in a moment when they actually have not had or been through or gone through whatever we do. So, and then we think they're somehow different to us. They are no different to us. They are feeling what we are feeling. They are concerned. Yeah. Sorry, you go.
No. I was just going to say, I agree with what you're saying 100%. And what they're doing actually is they're 100% authentic about it. So whereas you and I might feel angry about something and like push it down because now's not the time and I'm going to process that later and I'm going to compartmentalize that and blah, 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 blah. And what they're doing is they're feeling it immediately and they're expressing it immediately. And, as you know, Taya, my little one's autistic, and she was having a massive meltdown the other day. And was it inconvenient to me? Yes, it was. In my adult world, it was inconvenient to me that she was feeling the feels at that particular moment because I had 99 things to do and it was all happening. Blah, 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 blah. And my energy was up and her energy was up and it wasn't going to work. And, we were completely at opposite poles to each other. And I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. Come back into the moment. Stop thinking about 20 minutes time. What's happening right now? Where is she? Let me meet her there. And so in that particular situation, I just sat down on the floor.
Yeah.
And she was like off the charts, saw me sat down. I just opened my arms. That's all I did. Didn't say anything. And she just came and crawled up on my lap and we just hugged it out quietly, and I was trying to force a situation that just wasn't going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And it's so easy, as enlightened as I consider myself to be, it's so easy to fall into those traps and you have to just like, wake up. This isn't working. I need to just chill. I need to meet her where she is. And that's just not a parent-child thing. That can be a peer-to-peer thing as well. That can be like with kids. If you've got a friend who's flipping out or angry or doing, just to meet them where they are and go from there. And instead of trying to, when you're feeling up here and they're feeling down here, demanding that they reach you here, come down, meet them where they are and move on from that point.
Yeah. And expecting that a child will be able to meet you is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's expecting that even expecting that someone my age is going to meet me is ridiculous. It's mostly expecting, and we, I'm sort of moving on to that demanding accountability. I committed that I was going to be the one to meet others. And I didn't do that because it was the right thing to do or that now I'm a good person because I've, let go. No, I made a commitment because I get satisfaction and fulfillment out of that, because my relationships improved, because my connection with my kids is now phenomenal. Now I have people say to me as well, you've done all this work and you still react. Yeah, I said, I didn't make a commitment not to be human.
Yeah, exactly.
That was never on the cards. I made a commitment that when I'm being human and when other people are being human, which is going to happen regardless of what I commit to, I made a commitment that I would notice it, interrupt it, and then meet you. And
I really agree with that. And I think as well, when people are saying, but you've done all this work and you still react. And I think sometimes it stops people from trying because, you know, none of us are perfect. And, you know, I have moments, as I said, where my child was melting down. I was like, this is really inconvenient, da, 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 da. But it's in the intention. The perfection is in the intention. Yeah. And the intention is, I need to be more open to the experiences of others. Yes. I need to be not so wrapped up in myself, and I need to be consciously aware that I need to pause and open myself up to the possibilities that are happening for you, and then incorporate that into the experience. And I think that's the difference. And I think people think, oh, well, I'm not even going to try, it's too hard. And you know what? Sometimes it is really hard. You know, sometimes pushing your ego down, particularly when you're in a situation where you feel that you are right and they are wrong. You know, we all do that. You know, as much as we don't want to judge, we are, as a you know, humans, we tend to go for judgment because it's survival. So we judge, is that person safe for me? Is that person not safe for me? So there is judgment within us. But, you know, it starts to get a bit screwy when we're just considering our position as the right way and everybody else's position as the wrong way. That's when things start falling down.
Yeah, totally. And I like to put this idea to bed. You know, everyone likes to be positive thinking, and not everyone, but there's a lot of positive thinking out there. Life is actually just hard. Okay. Now people go, oh, you shouldn't say that because, you know, you're about, well, I want people to consider that when you accept that this is actually a challenging place to be on planet Earth, we're trying to work out things with 8 billion other people. It is just challenging and hard, but there's nothing wrong with that. So when you can get peace with, oh, I'm one person experiencing a challenge in this thing called life, and people do things that they definitely shouldn't do, and they treat me in ways they definitely shouldn't treat me, and they react in ways they definitely shouldn't react, and I'm not getting results, and that shouldn't be happening. And when you realize that every other person on the planet feels exactly the same, you kind of can get settled in, it just is this way. Like it's like, now what will you do? If people are going to just keep reacting if you react, so you could be the person that develops yourself as someone who meets that person and empathizes. And if your kids are always just going to throw tantrums like every kid does, well, what could you do in that moment to bring yourself joy and have satisfaction and fulfillment? And we all as parents grow up worrying about our kids hating us. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's afraid their kids are going to grow up not liking us. Right? So if you're afraid of that, continuing to argue with them is not going to be the answer. Okay.
No, and it's right. Interesting. It's interesting because how you show up is going to directly affect that. And you know, I posted that I was working with a parent recently, and we were discussing the behavior of the teen in the situation, and it was unacceptable, and they weren't, you know, compromising, and they weren't saying anything, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we went through this whole thing, and you know, I could see, because I was out of it, what was happening. And the conversation sort of turned, and we both started laughing, because the realization was that that parent wasn't actually complaining about the teen. The parent was actually complaining about themselves, because they weren't showing up in the relationship as they needed to be, with that clear expectation, clear communication, actions matching intention. And so we really, I love that sort of the ruthless accountability, because we need to be looking at ourselves so much more in each situation, not just deflecting, oh, well, they're being unreasonable, it's them. And I'm not saying that people aren't unreasonable, you know, absolutely they are. And sometimes there's behaviors that need consequences. And I'm not saying that that's not the case. No. But how did we show up in the situation? And, you know, if that's not going to help that particular scenario, how could we show up differently in the future that would empower everybody in the situation much more for a successful outcome?
Yeah. And it's exactly what you just said. It's, you know, the realization that you're not acting the way that you want to act in the situation. And so where I'm definitely advocating providing compassion and empathy for others, it really is sourced in yourself. So when you go and throw a wobbly and react and call Kathy because you're just so frustrated with your teenager, you want to first stop and just be so gentle with yourself for being human.
Yeah.
It's so every parent is doing the same thing. I, as enlightened and conscious as I keep getting told I am, I lose my shit with my kids. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing I can see that's different between when I started to get interested in it and when I wasn't is that the time frame between me walking up to my child or my children and saying, that really didn't work. It had nothing to do with you. I love you. What was the impact of that on you? How did that feel? Has reduced from never, or maybe I'd do it a year later, to a few moments. That's the difference. It does not mean I don't react. And then some days I might really hold on to it for like half a day. Right? So that's the only difference. It's the time frame. It's not that it's going to happen. It's how good I've gotten at telling my kids and demonstrating the compassion I have for myself, for my feelings, for my thoughts, for what's important to me. And that sometimes that gets away from me and I react.
And, I love that. And it's not about not having boundaries either. So,
No.
My children I've raised to be very fiercely, consciously aware and empathetic and compassionate and everything and all of that. But it doesn't mean you have to accept everything that everyone's dishing out, because you can say no with compassion and kindness and an awareness of where that person is right now in their journey. And that's been a really interesting thing for me to watch with my kids, is their ability to go, yeah, I can really see where that person is at the moment, but I'm just not willing to let that into my experience. But I'm going to put down a boundary kindly and with compassion and care, and I understand where they're coming from, but I'm not going to tolerate that in my experience right now. And I think there's a sort of misconception out there that to be a compassionate, sympathetic, empathetic, kind person, you need to then be a doormat. And I don't believe that.
No, that's definitely what I can see a collapse in the collective. It's also, you don't even have to like people. It's not required. You don't have to like anyone. Being a doormat is not being kind. It's really the commitment to yourself, what's important to you, and what is going to have you really live out the life that you want to live. And that lives in the way you treat others and the way you treat yourself. So if you treat someone like, I'll use this as an example. I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday who has not been doing great things to me or just in my life. They have not been taking very great actions, right? A friend of mine. And this friend said to me, I'm really worried that you're going to abandon me, And I said, well, abandonment comes with this idea of just cutting you off and telling you that. It said, no, that's not going to be the case at all. I'll talk to you. I'll be very kind to you over text message. I'll listen to anything that you have to say. You can call me anytime. But I'll just be clear, if this continues, I will not want to be around you. And that's because I value how I feel, how I think, and what matters to me. And she said, what was interesting is she said, oh, I must value forgiveness more than you. And I went, okay, I can understand how you think that, but I think maybe you collapse forgiveness with having to be around people. I've forgiven you already. Like, it's no big deal for me, but I'm still not going to have you be around me and be in my life if you continue to act in ways that don't work for me, despite how much I tell you. Now, we think that means changing people. I think there's something that means changing. And I said to her, I don't want you to change at all. If this is your truth, then maybe our friendship just doesn't work. If you want to stand there and say, this is your truth and this is what satisfies and fulfills you and lights you up and empowers you, then that's great. Go do it. Maybe we're just not meant to be friends. But we do not have to hang around people that don't empower us, don't fulfill us, don't satisfy us. And more than anything for me, it's like, is not willing to work things out powerfully.
Mm. And I think, you know, what you're saying there as well, it's an interesting conversation that I've been having with people lately, that holding somebody in that situation to a higher standard is an act of love, in my opinion.
Mm.
So like with my children, they might make mistakes, and they're very welcome to make mistakes. In fact, we encourage it because you don't get growth without it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, integrity is important to us, you know, kindness and honesty and all of those fundamentals that we've been, you know, put as our foundation of growing this family. And, you know, by saying to my children, I totally see where you are. You've made a mistake there. I get it. Let's work through it. But I'm holding you to a higher standard because I know you're capable of better. That's, to me, an act of love. So when you're saying that to a friend and saying, yeah, I see where you're going with this, but that's not congruent with my value system, my integrity, my standards, my, you know, the way I'm living my life. And it's holding people to a higher standard. And that's because we see the potential beyond what they can see right now. So
Yeah.
I see it as an act of love, you know, that, and I say to my kids, you know, I'm the one here that can see your potential, that can see how great you can be, that can see, you know, that you can do better than that, and not in a grade sense. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a showing up in a humanness sense, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, people are quick to take things personally. But when I've had a friend show up in my experience and say, hey, you're being a bit of an a-hole right now, I'm like, am I? How am I being an a-hole? You know, that's news to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that can't be right. Don't you know who I am? But, you know, people who genuinely care about you will show up and say, I'm not sure that this is the right thing. And to be able to take that in the loving intention that's been given and just really apply it and reassess it and grow yourself, that's powerful, you know. But it takes courage. Like, it takes courage to be open to sort of open, loving feedback. And I'm not saying you're going to listen to online trolls who are just out to, you know, spread hate. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in a genuinely caring situation. And you know what? That you might very well part ways and go your different pathways, and that's fine. But it's a gift to be able to take on that experience and allow it to evolve you in a way that's powerful for you for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had just the other day, a really good friend of mine who I respect. I called him and I said, I've just been reacting to something and I don't really like it. He's someone that I really respect in terms of his opinion. He goes, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. You've been being so self-obsessed lately. It was not easy to hear. I know, it was not easy to hear. And I did even try arguing with him for a little while about that. And then at some point, and this is what I call real love and friendship, he did not stop having the conversation with me and give up. He went, this is what I can see. I trust what I can see. He's done his own self-awareness work. I do trust that he does the work on himself. So he's not just pointing finger at me. He's like, I do this work myself on me. So I could really hear it. And then when I had a look, I could absolutely see that there was something that I was protecting and that I am impacted by this whole COVID experience that's going on in the world right now. So I had sort of cut myself off from feeling this heartbreak for how things are kind of unraveling and unfolding. And I wouldn't have got that to him if he hadn't have mentioned it. And having someone in my life that can say that to me. And so friendship for me is not being nice. Friendship for me is not being like, oh, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If I go and help you with the kids, you'll help me with the dinner. And if you get busy one day, I'm going to make you feel really guilty for it. It's like, no, that's not friendship to me. Friendship to me is I can call you and do 100 things for you. And if you cannot make it work, that's fine with me. I want you to be in your truth 100% of the time. My contribution is not equivalent to how valuable our friendship is, right? But what I do care about is that you call me on my stuff, that you hold my integrity as highly as I do, and that I can do the same with you so that we can grow together. And that you be that for my kids. And you never let me get away with stuff that doesn't work. And it's like, that's what friendship for me is. That's what love is for me. Yeah. It is not about being kind and nice and being a doormat at all. It's something quite the opposite.
No, and I think, I call them my lighthouses.
Yeah.
So I've got my lighthouses, because I'm pretty much an independent person. I get on with things. I'm in my own little zone, head down, bum up, doing. But when you go through a storm, you need your lighthouse. You need to go, oh, okay, my foundations have been rocked here. This has happened, that's happened. I'm floundering. I'm trying to, connect in again. Who am I? What do I think? Where am I going with this? And because you do get tired and you do get overwhelmed and you do get stressed, because that's part of it. And to be able, as you say, to reach to somebody, and it's really important, I think, for kids and parents to hear that, is to be able to reach someone and then say lovingly, yeah, I've been watching you from a distance. I can see what you're doing. I've been holding space for you to have that experience. Yeah. I knew you'd come to me when you were ready, because when you come to me, you're going to get a real answer. And my friends know I'm not going to phone you, Jess, and go, I've been watching what's going on and I think this, and this. That's not how it works. No. But if you phone me and you say, right, this is what's happening, I really would like to know your opinion on that. I'm going to give my opinion honestly, because it's been asked for. Gently, with love, but honestly. And my friends know that. They know that if they come to me, I'm going to go, yeah, I can see where you are with that. And I'm compassionate and I can sympathize and, all the rest of it. But I think possibly, you've been disconnected from who you are, which is this, and this. Whereas the behaviors have been this and this because of the stresses and strains that you've been under or whatever. And I think it's important that we're looking all the time to be offended. We're looking for reasons to take things personally, and being able to have conversations that are uncomfortable. That's part of communication. We're supposed to be having conversations sometimes that are a bit uncomfortable, and that's okay. It can't all be flowers and rainbows and glitter and all of that. Sometimes we need to dig deep and say, you know what, you're being a bit of a jerk. Actually, love you very much, but this is what's happening. And that person to receive it and go, wow, I hadn't realized I was being a bit of a jerk. Let me have a think about that. And you know what, they might not be in a place to receive that right now, and they might go away and think about it and come back. And obviously, I don't suggest that everyone goes around telling each other they're jerks. I'm saying, with my children, we've had real conversations where I've watched them go through things and I've kept my mouth shut because they're a bit older and they need to find their own way. But when they sit down and I say, wow, that was really quite jerky behavior there. We need to be, and we talk it through, and they go, okay, and they do the same for me. It's not an instance of power. They will come to me and say, Mum, this and this, and go, wow, I didn't even think of it like that. And we just need to be a bit more open to having these difficult conversations, because so many times I see people avoiding like the plague having an uncomfortable conversation, which means the end of a relationship.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately, I would say that happens more often than not. And I even watch it around in my own friendship circles. And I'm not saying, and I'm not suggesting that people don't take space. Sometimes space is really important so that you can clear it. But this idea that you're not my tribe, and so you kind of cut contact, I just don't prescribe to that. We're all one tribe with different views and unique perspective. And I'm not even saying that you have to hang out with lots of people, but there's a real difference between cutting someone off and choosing not to spend time with someone. And I think the energy and the, what's possible when we can even say, like, I have a friend, really good friend, that I said, hey, do you want to hang out? And she goes, no, I don't feel like it. I think
that's me 99% of the time.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And then she goes, and I do get it. I have a lot of energy, right? She goes, sometimes I just want to be on my own because your energy is really intense. And I love that she can say that to me.
Yeah.
You know, and if she's moody, I'm like, no, don't really want to hang out with you today. You're in one of those moods, you know, and she gets it. Like there's no offense taken
Yeah.
because it's so honest.
Yeah.
She's also someone that will hold me to account. There's absolute truth, what I call it. It's just telling the truth. Now, you can get to a point, and I've had this conversation where you get to a point where you're like, do you know what? We argue a lot. And maybe we just don't need to hang out. And you can get to that point of the truth. It's not cutting someone off. It's just choosing not to hang out with each other. You know, I've had people go, yeah, okay, that's true. It doesn't have to mean that you need to go to gossip and everyone and give them your position and tell them why you did and get them to agree that this person's a bad person. It's like, no, we're living in a world of a lot of people. There are going to be people that you prefer to hang out with and you don't prefer to hang out with. I don't think you should stay in relationships that are continually, you know, perpetually argumentative. If you're really trying to work things out, you know, I think that there's so much choice, but we don't have to make breaking up friendships or not having friendships a big deal. They can be just as much of a big deal as having one. It's like, you just choose, oh, no, that's not for me. And I do advocate doing the kind of work. You do have to do the kind of work where you can be honest. And you do have to tell people that people are not for you. And you do it in a way that is really loving and kind. And you can pretty much own that you're not for them too.
And I think, you know, extending that is that integrity piece that you talk about in your bio, which is sort of keeping a steady line regardless. And I think, you know, it takes a lot of work to do that. And to be able to think, okay, you know, I say to, when I used to teach, you know, I used to say to my kids, right, you know, you're year 5s now. Let's do a code of conduct. Let's do your own code of integrity. What's important to you? What are your values? What are your standards? What are your boundaries? Because it's different for everybody. You know, we've got countrywide laws, we've got school rules, we've got home rules, but what are your rules that you're living by? Who do you want to be? Who are you going to show up as? And you know, once you have that established, and there's some adults that haven't done this yet, right? There's some adults that are so easily affected by, they're in a mad mood, so I'm in a bad mood. They've done that, so I'm really raging. Da, 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 da. But to be able to be really connected and really have that integrity and authenticity and accountability within yourself, someone can come at me, and I'm not saying that it might not make me feel sick. It might make me feel worried. It might make me feel all of that, but I'm going to stay in my integrity. So I'm not going to argue back. I'm going to be quiet because that's how I handle things. And this is the boundaries that I have. And these are the standards that I have. And traveling that line, you actually have a much more peaceful existence long term, because you're not so easily swayed with everybody else's stuff that's going on. And I think that's really important too, is to, in any situation where you are, just go, okay, how do I feel in this situation? And I've had situations where even as an adult, like, this doesn't stop, you know, the high school stuff still goes on in the playground whether you're a parent. So, you know, let's not pretend it doesn't. You know, and I've had situations where I've had people talking about me behind my back, and other people have come and told me that they're talking about me. I've been like, yeah, that's okay. Because the people that know me know that's not true. And the people that want to listen, they're not meant to be my friends, obviously. So I'm just going to let that go. You know, I'm not going to go and go, how dare you say this about me? It's not true. And try and justify my position, which is giving it all energy and attention and, you know, life. I'm just going to go, yeah, okay, that's okay. You know, the right people will stay and the right people will go. I'm just going to let it naturally cull my environment. And, you know, and I think that's a really important lesson I wish I had learned a lot younger.
Yeah. And it's a really good example, because how do you learn that lesson? You know, I had to get to a point where I had, in my attempts at trying to please everyone, I'd gotten to a point where I'd pleased no one. And everyone was very unhappy with me, including my family and friends and everything. And I remember I got to a point where justifying it wasn't making any difference. In fact, the more I justified, I made it worse. And there was one point where I went, people are going to do this no matter what I do. Like people, I mean, I've just done everything to try and please everyone.
Yeah.
And they're still saying bad stuff about me.
Yeah.
So what if I just didn't do anything about that and didn't try to please anyone? And then I got to that point that you just mentioned where it was like, oh yeah, people say things about me. Well, I'm on social media a lot. I have loads of people say all sorts of things about me, but they're going to do that no matter what I do. At least I'm living out the life I want to live now.
Mm.
And they're still going to say bad stuff about me. But that's okay now because I'm living the life I love. Whereas before I was living someone else's dream. Still people were saying stuff about me. It's like, well, there is no such thing as living in a world with other humans, not being gossiped about, not being judged. It actually is going to happen no matter what you do. But you get so much choice in who you hang out with, who you play with, who you're going to be in a relationship with in long term. You get a lot of choice. So
how you respond as well.
Exactly. How you respond and your experience of all of it. Absolutely. And that does take being interested in what it takes to become that.
Yeah. And I know that just building on that, the times I've been the angriest with other people and I've had to work through that anger, when I've resolved it, I've realized the person who I was angry with was me. I was angry with myself because I engaged in the argument, or I allowed them to treat me that way for so long that they thought it was okay, or whatever. So in fact, every single scenario that I've been angry with somebody else, and don't get me wrong, their behavior wasn't brilliant, but I've been angry with myself for not keying into where's my standards, where's my boundaries, where's my integrity. So, okay, so taking all of that and just rounding this amazing conversation off with young people entering now a very changed world and showing up to be the best possible versions of themselves, what do you think are the key elements to excellent leadership for now and the future?
I think, firstly, empathy is very, very important. Like teaching, this is all in communication. Actually developing yourself as someone that intentionally forces yourself to see other people's perspectives. Because your brain doesn't want to. Your brain never wants to. Your brain wants to be right and justified. Okay, so it takes forcing yourself to see other people's perspectives. So that's a key element. And that will allow communication and you'll be able to collaborate and get clarity with others, work things out. The other thing is, I would say integrity, definitely, but what that means is a commitment to your own growth. You have to be interested in whatever you see where you're doing it, whatever you're judging in others. You have to take the case that if you're frustrated because someone's not doing something, where are you doing that with others? Because realistically, if you really are at peace with something, it's because you're at peace with it, with your own behavior. So anything that reactivates you is a reflection of your own not at peaceness with that behavior in yourself. Right? So integrity of self, which is essentially going and looking at the things in your own, and having a look at your own backyard, but it really is taking a look. If you don't like superior people, where are you being superior? If you don't like judgmental people, where are you being judgmental? If you don't like how people behave badly towards each other, where are you behaving badly towards others? You know, it's really the integrity of yourself is really taking on and looking at those things. That takes courage, but that's really about integrity.
I think as well, sorry.
Yeah. You said key elements. I was just saying the key elements, but no, please.
No.
I've got one more. But
carry on.
Yeah, and the other one is training your environment. So, you do all this work. You go out there and you discover this stuff. You can't keep it to yourself. You've got to tell people, I discovered this thing about me. You've got to go, all right, now that I'm this demand of myself, I demand it in others. So you want to train your environment around you to hold you to account and you hold them to account. It is not a one-way. It's not one way. So you train your environment, you go to work on your own empowerment and your integrity and that communication and empathy with others. Those three components, if you're not training your environment, it's not going to shift. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just going to echo what you're saying and saying, you know, for me, it's taking that, you know, I am that I am. And exactly what you said, you know, when someone triggers me, I'm going, okay, where's that come from? And I can 99% of the time find somewhere in my history where I have behaved like that with somebody else.
Yeah.
And being able to see that, you know, we are capable of that, you know, and we may have evolved past that right now, but, you know, we can't sit in that superior space and go, oh, well, that's, you know, how dare they? Because if I really dig into my past, I can find an example. It might be in primary school, but I can find an example where I've treated somebody like that. And you just say, okay, yeah, so I'm in no position to judge anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just on the communication piece as well, is that when you really stop and start to ask what's going on in people's lives, you can't unsee what's really happening. You know, the biggest transformation for me was I've spoken to in depth, because of the training I did in leadership, what was really happening in people's lives that they don't tell people. The hurt, the pain, the suffering, that they, like the people that you think are always are killing it, they're not. Even if they say they've got a 12-week program that's going to fix your life, that's advertising and marketing. That's not what's really happening. Every human being on the planet right now is resisting difficulties, is trying to be positive where they can, when actually what's happening is all this stuff that's mostly out of our control. And we've got time, we do have this opportunity called our mindset, our energy, that we can control, but everyone is in the same place. We are all no different. And when you really connect to that, and you really settle in with that, then no matter what's happening in front of you, no matter how someone's acting, you have nothing but compassion for them. And that's when you truly get to communicate and bring joy in life that you may not ever even seen before. What you can bring out in your own life in those moments is so beautiful and rewarding.
No, that's so true. Yeah, and you know, it's that thought about everybody's going through something, you know, and I remember I had an incident with a lady in the post office once, and it was just this awful, it was so hot, and I had little ones with me and I had to queue forever, and I got there and I faxed this thing, and then I got home, it was so hot and I was stressed, and the kids didn't want to be there, and they're all little and they're all being difficult, and I got home and she hadn't faxed all the pages, and she was rude to me when she served me, and I went back and I was like, stay in my integrity. I am a kind, compassionate person. This has really irritated me, but I'm just going to stay in my truth. And I had to drag all the kids back out on a hot day, and I had to queue up again, and I had to do all this thing. And you could see when I went up to the counter, she was like, oh, here she is again. And she was quite rude to me the first time. And I was still my pleasant self, because that's how I've decided to show up in the world. So I'm showing kindness where, and, you know, I said, oh, I'm really sorry, but not all of the pages went through. I really need this document to go through today, so would you mind doing it again, please? And she burst into tears. She went, I'm so sorry, my dad died yesterday, I can't think straight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't go in and go, you did this, I had to come out again with the kids, you know, you just come from a place, come from an assumption that person is hurting, or that person has done something. And I actually read an article yesterday where a girl's been going through this psychotherapy, and part of it, she thought, I'm going to reach out to the bullies in high school. I'm actually going to reach out to them, now we're adults, and say, I don't know whether you remember me, but this happened. And that's a brave thing to do, to dig around in that old wound, and just say, you know, she said she'd reached out to all of these people that had made her life a living hell in high school, and she was still dealing with that PTSD sort of trauma from those experiences. And she said virtually all of them came back and went, God, I'm so, so sorry. I think about that so much. I was going through so much unhappiness at home at that point, and I don't know why I picked you. And you think, wow. And that person's lived with the trauma of that bullying all this time, has been brave enough to reach out to those people and say, why did you do that? You know, that really affected me. And that person to go, I am so sorry. That is part of myself I'm not proud of. And you know, what an interesting opportunity to heal so much in so many.
Oh, absolutely. And I love hearing those stories. Every time I hear about something remarkable happening like that, it always starts with someone empathizing with the other person.
Yeah.
And then having the courage to say something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just because I am going to have to go very soon,
yeah,
I just want to end on that. Sometimes we go, how do we access this stuff, right? How do we do that? How do we start to have conversations and be like that, like Kathy just was with the person at the post office? You know, well, just like you become really good at a sport, you have to practice. And you have to be, so to practice something, you need to be taught these tools. You know, so I advocate, there is so much personal and professional development out there. There are so many people providing these solutions and these trainings now of how to live life powerfully, how to live in communication with people in a way that works and has you have a great life. It's there, but it just takes the courage to jump in and go, I'm going to take a course. I actually don't know how to do this. Most people don't. And even the ones that are practicing a lot are still practicing. You know, so I'm a big advocate. If you want to do that, it's so much available. Teens, young people, adults. There's so much out there now. You can't say you don't know how. You can only say you're not interested in being that. Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant. Lovely. Wonderful. Amazing. Powerful conversation, Jess. As always,
Yes.
love talking to you. Thank you so, so much for that. And I will put all of Jess's details and how to contact her in the show notes.
Yes.
And I worship you. Thank you so much for showing up and being authentic and real and raw and shining a light on others. So thank you so much, Jess.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Kathy, for having me. Thank you, everyone.
No worries.